Hey everyone, my name is Danny Dumas, and this is the Earn Your Title podcast. I've got my good friend here, Doc. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell me a little bit about what you do, how you do it, and then we'll get going and get some more details.
Sounds good. Hey, Danny, thanks for having me, man. I'm Army Special Forces medical sergeant. In the military, it's called an 18 Delta. It's just your MOS number letter title that describes that. I've got about 12 years active duty experience under my belt and multiple combat tours overseas. And I recently switched over to the Army Special Forces National Guard, where I currently serve and do private military contracting primarily, which is how we met, providing military training for police and firefighters near where I live.
Awesome. And so this would be like the Green Beret, like that would be the common thing to say. Is
Right.
that if that's what you said, hey, I was Green Beret, that would be the thing, like that would be what people know you as?
Correct. Yeah, it's so it's a common misconception usually in the media is people will refer to Special Operations Forces, so SOF or SOF, as Special Forces.
Gotcha.
And the Army actually specifically is capital S, capital F. Special Forces means the Green Berets.
Gotcha. And that's what you are.
Correct.
And specifically, you went the medical side of that. So, you know, in the war movies, when people are yelling medic, you're the guy that's running up there, or is there more than just the medical side? Is it?
Yeah, there is. So the baseline Green Beret training takes place in between Fort Bragg and another base nearby in North Carolina called Camp McCall. And it consists of about 2-ish years for a variety of tactical training, survival training, language training, unconventional warfare training, all these little tools for your little tool basket that make you Green Beret qualified. They're on a team. There's weapons specialists, engineer who also do demolitions. Those guys are specialists. There's medics and radio operators or communications guys, basically. And so all of those jobs require about another 3 or 4 months of training, and the medical training requires another year. So you go to the Special Operations Combat Medic School at Fort Bragg separately. So like everyone goes through the Green Beret pipeline the same time, the same way, but the medics get peeled off and go to an additional year of training. So for me, it actually took me about 3.5 years to become fully Special Forces qualified.
Gotcha.
So on a job or on a deployment, most of the time what you're doing, especially as a medic, but most of the time you're actually actively engaged with partner forces or doing combat stuff that you would think of like guns and trucks and normal movie stuff, right? Like, okay, that guy's doing combat missions. And then hopefully nobody gets hurt and I don't have to do my medical stuff. So I'm also sniper qualified. So usually what I'll do is I'll hang wherever is tactically advantageous, and I'll also have a sniper rifle. If I can employ that, I will do that as well.
Gotcha. Cool. So one of the reasons I want to have you on is I feel like in modern society, it is really easy for life to be really easy, at least here in America. You know, it is easy to wake up, go from your climate-controlled room to your climate-controlled car, to not really face any adversity. And that seems like a good thing. Like, I think human nature wants us to seek out the easy. But I don't think it's good for like our spirit, you know, like the spirit of a man or the spirit, your soul. I don't think it's good. Could you maybe go into a little bit about the, Special Forces selection and assessment and how you think that's kind of shaped the way you see the world? Because I think you probably have a very special view on suffering and doing hard things. And I'm sure none of that was easy, but life is probably easier now because you went through that. What is your take on, experiencing hard things, going through hard training, committing to doing it, and now, how does that affect your life?
I think you have to start with your intent, right? Because like what's very important thing that you said is committing to doing it, right? So I do talk to, at any given time, it's not a ton, sometimes it's more than others, but I'm regularly speaking with young guys who are looking to join the military and specifically become Green Berets. And the number one thing I will tell them that sounds cliche is just don't quit. Do not stop. Right. And so going back to what you said about being intentional about things, the suffering, the pain, the work, obviously some of that pain can be mitigated with preparation, right? You run more, you do push-ups, you do sit-ups, you prepare yourself to be winded and tired. But ultimately, what really gets you through anything is just telling yourself that you are not going to quit. You're either going to physically become incapacitated, right, or someone's going to pull you out against your will. And that is what they're looking for at Special Forces assessment and selection. I've been next to guys. There's one portion of selection that's particularly unpleasant. I'm actually not sure if they do it anymore, but they have you in a pit that's filled with, it's like a crash pad, you know, it's filled with chopped up tires. Right, and right. So it's an area where it's soft, you can fall, it doesn't hurt. And they have you doing these miserable PT, physical training exercises, and they're spraying you with water hoses, and you're moving logs, and you're going up and down and doing all this stuff. And you will see guys quit in there. And I remember specifically being next to a guy who was doing well, and he wanted to quit. And one of the cadre, I heard him, he whispered to him, and he was like, "Hey man, just don't quit." Like, just basically telling him, don't fucking do that. Right. It's going to be over soon. And that's the lesson you learn. Now, I don't know if he made it or not, I'm not sure. However, that's the one thing that will get you booted from selection, guaranteed, is quitting. You will not pass. You will not be given an exception. And most of the time they'll give you what's called an NTR, which is a never to return, meaning you were put in a stress position or a stressful situation and you quit. And that is the one thing we can't have, because I can have, and me being on a team, I can have somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. Right. I can have someone who may not know exactly what, you know, haven't been in that situation for, lack of experience. I can't deal with somebody who's unwilling to push themselves. And so for my life outlook, really what that told me is it puts a clock on all pain and suffering, right? It's like, right, this will not last forever. This will pass. Right. And, you know, even mundane things like doing home improvement stuff, like I have a basement, right? It's a finished basement, and it was completely covered in carpet. And my wife wanted to redo it, which was the right idea because the carpet was filthy, right? And I'm looking at it, and it's about 1,800 square feet of carpet. And I know the only way in and out is a staircase, right? And I know I've got to cut carpet into rolls, and I've got to cut insulation into rolls that I can get through the hallways and just carry it out one at a time. And I walked probably 20 or 25,000 steps that day, just going up and down all damn day. But I knew if I just put one foot in front of the other and I just deal with a little bit of discomfort, I don't have to pay somebody to come. I can be self-sufficient. Right. And that experience of just being miserable, but knowing that it's going to end, as long as you don't quit, you will become successful. So in that way, it has been tremendously helpful in my personal life to experience what I have in the military.
Yeah. You mentioned prepping, and obviously physical fitness is a part, and I would like you to maybe tell me like what you do then to get ready, maybe what you do to maintain it now. But you mentioned that mental part. Do you think you can mentally prepare for that? And do you have any things you did prior, like, I don't know, meditation or something along of mantras or something that got you so that quitting was not an option?
Yeah. So a big thing for me was, you know, for some people it's praying, some people it's meditating, whatever it is. I started every single day with essentially, like, I guess what people would call an affirmation. Like, this is what I want. This is what I'm asking for. This is what I want to do. And I also, again, with being intentional, I also quit the jobs that I had before I joined the Army. Well, you have to, right? But I enlisted active duty to try out for Special Forces with no jobs and nothing as a backstop. So a full commitment was incredibly helpful for the mindset. You know, the old saying, like, burn your boats, right? Right. You have no way out. The only way is forward. So the mental preparation, I got to say, over time, a man or a woman can gain some intestinal fortitude because they'll experience things that show them otherwise, right? Like, hey, I can't handle this. I can't do this. But at assessment and selection, they need you to be ready to go, right? You just don't have the skills yet. But the person you are, that's what they're assessing. You go through a battery of psychological tests. If there's red flags there, you get interviewed by a psychologist. You do aptitude tests. They look at your whole military background of those, your entrance exams, essentially like IQ testing. And they build a profile. And I don't know, I'm not privy to the qualities they're looking for. Only people that work there are. But they know what they want right when they see it. And the time to change your outlook on life, it usually doesn't happen then. Some guys it does, sometimes it doesn't. But what I'm getting at is, I think there's an innate thing in your head, specifically for things like Special Forces or, like, you know, what you do, like a dangerous job. you either have that bone in you or you don't. Because I've also talked to young soldiers that I've tried to mentor into trying out for special forces. And, you know, some of them, occasionally it's refreshing and interesting. They're honest and like, hey man, I don't want to do that. You know, I want nothing to do with jumping out of planes and getting shot at or getting blown up, or I just don't want to do that. Right. So it's not for everyone, but neither is having a great life, because you have to push yourself, right? And you have to, like you said, earn your title. And I'm a huge believer in earning your title. So in the Army Special Forces, you get a tab that you wear on your shoulder on your uniform, and it's a nice little long tab, and it goes over your unit, and it's very clearly says Special Forces. And in our community, we have a saying where you're either a tab holder or a tab bearer, right? So you can wear the tab, you can have it on your shoulder, but are you actually showing up and earning it every single day? Right. You're constantly being assessed.
And I think honestly, that statement is why I started doing this podcast, because sometimes in fatherhood or being a husband, you kind of lose your way a little bit where you just show up. You know, it's just today. Nothing I did today is going to make or break my relationship with my wife or my kids, but I need to show up every day, because it's, you know, people get divorced. Usually it's not one massive thing, right? It is small, you know, inconsistent statements, putting people down, tiny little things that don't seem like much, but they add up. And if you can have the mentality of, today I'm going to earn in order for me to be a husband, my wife has to call me that. Like, she has to accept that every day, because we know divorce happens, right? It's more than half. And those people at some point, they said, no, that's not going to happen today. I'm done. They didn't earn it. And I think that's huge. I think having that mentality that today's the day. I can only have today. And I'm sure you've experienced, you know, we have a job where we experience loss, either amongst each other or where we see it out in the world. And I think having that, knowing that today is all you really have, that is huge to me. And I really, like, even for my kids, I'm like, I try not to be morbid, but I'm like, hey man, let's have a good day, because today is what we have. I think that's a vital. That's huge, earning that title every day.
Oh, I agree. And the thing is, with doing a job where you have to deal with loss of life, or you have to deal with your own mortality on a regular basis, or the prospect of it, I think that is really helpful for. I mean, this is obviously a little biased or misogynistic. It's definitely helpful for men. I know, like, hormonally, obviously we're different, right? Men and women. I think a man, especially when he's young and his body is still able to, I think he needs to put himself through some sort of stress or scenarios like that, to where he knows what he's about, right? Because you really, if you've never been in a fight, if you've never been in a struggle, if you've never done anything tangible like that, I would imagine there's a deep sense of insecurity there, right? Because you've never pushed yourself. And that's part of that preparation of what you're asking about earlier, is like, you push yourself as hard as you can. You submit yourself to whatever apparatus it is that you want to be a part of, right? Whatever organization it is you want to join. They give you the tools you need, and then you're going to go out and use them. And then you're really going to find out what you're about. You know, like, are you going to run into that burning building? Are you going to run out there when there's gunshots going off? Like, what are you going to do when the time comes? And preparation mitigates that, but a lot of times it's your mindset. You have to earn it. Yeah. Right.
I teach, sometimes I teach the topic of post-traumatic stress in the fire academy. And I always tell the guys, it doesn't have to be post-traumatic stress disorder. Right. That's too much. That's an injury. We've sustained an injury, and we need medical help. We need doctors. We need medicine, maybe. But you can have post-traumatic stress, which is like deadlifting something that it's within your reach. You know, I think about my grandparents. They, you know, both my grandparents, granddads were in the military, and they were the greatest generation. Why? Because this huge group of people went off and experienced stress, and when they came back, they did great things. Why? Because it wasn't war. And obviously it damaged some people, and there was some disorder. But a lot of guys, my grandfather, as far as I know, he lived a happy life when he came back, because he was at peace and he had done something hard. And I think guys, we shy away from, like, we almost feel like we fail if we're struggling. And it's okay. Like, you can get better by being stressed, by working through something. And I think that's really important.
Absolutely. I mean, to use a strange analogy, or it's just not strange, it's just kind of weird. Like, are you familiar with the X-Men movies?
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And I think maybe it was Deadpool. I can't remember. I think it was Deadpool. They were trying to pull his like mutation out of him, right? And how did they do that? With stress, right?
Right.
So obviously we're not comic book superheroes. Right. I wish I was, believe me, and my back wouldn't hurt anymore, right?
For sure.
But the only way to access your superpowers in real life really is through intense stress. And whether that's being the best at CrossFit, or that's being a special forces soldier, or a firefighter, or a police officer, or a real estate agent, whatever, you have to stress yourself out in an appropriate way, right? You know what I mean? If you don't push yourself, you're never going to grow. And that applies to your biceps as much or more than it applies to your internal fortitude and your character.
Absolutely. You mentioned your biceps. Let's talk about that. Your biceps. How much of a role did your physical preparation play in getting through special forces selection, and then maybe being effective doing your job in the military and now? How does physical fitness play into that?
Well, it's huge. It's physical fitness, especially in the military. It's one of the last organizations where you can be judged officially based on your appearance and your body composition, right? Most organizations now, whether they're corporate or government, you can't really enforce any sort of body composition standard. However, the military still maintains that. Thing number one is you can't show up to your job fat, right? Or just out of shape. Because not everyone has the genetics to be this chiseled, Brad Pitt, right? But don't be sloppy and don't be obviously out of shape, because in the military, you get rated on several things when you're a senior enlisted guy. And presence is one of them. And that includes your military presence, your bearing. Do you look like a soldier? Do you look like somebody who can do the job that they're advertising, right? So that's thing number one, right? But why it's actually important is because it enables you to do every other aspect of your job better. For me, in my initial training, basic training in the Army is not super hard. As long as you're like a normal American teenager who played a couple of sports, you'll be fine. The kids who sit on the couch a lot and heavy on the video games and not so heavy on the sports, they deal with some more stress fractures and osteo, things of that nature that come with the bone density. But that's a whole other subject on the current youth of the country. So once I was out of basic training, the physical training they put us through to prepare for selection, because I went through a program where you could try out directly. Hey, my dog just found me. Hey, buddy. You can try out. Yeah, he did. He came right in the office. So they put you through a preparation course, and all right, let me back up. This is my personal story. They don't run that preparation course in July or August because it's in Fort Bragg in the summertime. It's incredibly hot, so the heat casualty rates are too high for anyone's tolerance, really. So I got there in June, and so for June, July, August, and then September, I was in a holding pattern. And now keep in mind, this is about 12 years ago, so the Army's probably changed a little bit, but they just beat our asses 2 or 3 times a day, not physically, but I mean, you're going to run in the morning, you're going to do some sort of crazy body weight workout exercise in the afternoon, and then you're going to come back in the early evening. And if the instructors are, in a bad mood, or if you upset them, then they're going to physically beat you again. And there was days where you'd go on a formation run, and the guys that fell out of the run were given counseling statements. And you can only have so many counseling statements before you were put up for a review and dropped from the course. And this is before you even started. So from day one, the fear of God is instilled in you that you must excel. The only way to get through is to excel. So I did a combination of cardio, and then for us at the time, it was push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, right? Basic body weight stuff. And I firmly believe that any man who is, relatively within, a normal BMI body composition, and they're able to do, let's say, 40 to 50 push-ups in a minute, like that's a high level of fitness. And if they can run 2 miles in under, let's say, 14 minutes, I'd say that's reasonable. I mean, obviously you want to be faster than that. When I was at my peak as a young man and I was lighter than I am now, I was doing 2 miles in 11:50, which that's very fast. Yeah, but not anymore. Not anymore, Danny. Okay, not happening, dude.
Your back says no.
Right. Yeah, back, and then obviously going to the gym because I enjoy, having beach muscles. So I'm heavier than I was in basic training. Right. I just can't move that fast anymore physically. But to get to your point, and this, I've been thinking about this since you and I talked before tonight. The one thing I could say, if anyone was asking for advice, regardless of their field or their station in life, is if you're not fit, you need to be. Mm-hmm. And you don't need to be a bodybuilder. Right. You don't need to be, Rich Froning, CrossFit world champion. But you must be able to move quickly enough to where you can take care of your family, you can handle some sort of emergencies, and you're not going to just die early of cardiovascular disease, right? And that translates into everything we do, right? Like if you're in shape, your wife or significant other may be a little happier with you. You'll be happier with yourself.
100%.
You're going to set a good example for your kids. You're going to have that extra gas in the tank when you're home from work to throw the ball around.
Right.
You're going to have extra energy to do that home improvement thing on Saturday morning like you should, right? It translates into everything we do. So from the physical aspect, I can't preach it enough that guys and gals just need to get into the gym. And even sometimes just getting there is a victory. If you don't know what to do, get a personal trainer or get on YouTube. There's plenty of resources there. Or just go hit 10,000 steps a day to start with, But I'm getting a little long-winded here, but I can't overemphasize the importance of fitness, especially in today's society where we're bombarded with, easy access food and high calorie diets and all, there's methodologies out there to counter that. But it's at the end of the day, when I meet somebody, I'm assessing their body composition right away. Unless I see some sort of evidence of a debilitating injury, like a back brace or, a prosthetic of some sort. If you're obese or morbidly obese, I'm going to judge you. That's the bottom line, right? Because you're making choices that are negatively affecting you. And I know you're not happy.
Right.
That's unfortunate. But at the end of the day, if you're serious about your profession, if you're serious about living well, you have to be in shape.
Yeah.
You just have to.
Yeah. I think it's very easy. It's probably easy for me and you to see the consequences of not being in shape. If I show up to a fire and I burn through my air pack in 12 minutes and everyone else is at 20 minutes because I'm breathing so hard, I failed. And it's very obvious. Dumas wasn't in shape. And so I have a marker. Hey, I need to improve this. And what I think happens to guys though is they don't see their inability or their lack of physical fitness as failure. But think about it, like you said, when you come home and you don't have the gas in the tank to play with. Like my daughter came in before this for the podcast. She wanted to play. If I was physically exhausted from a long, stressful day, I didn't earn the title of father today because I said I'm too tired. Man, she's only getting older. I've got a 13-year-old who doesn't ask me to wrestle anymore. Like she doesn't ask to do these things. And by not being in shape, you're I don't want to say you're failing, but you're not earning it today.
Right.
And that is huge. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. No. Okay, well, what I was going to say is if you have the capacity to achieve and maintain fitness, you're also just completely offending the people who were born without that capability, right? There's millions and millions of people, for whatever reason, it's hereditary, God-given. They can't do that, right? And there's people that have had life things happen to them where they can't do that anymore, right? So if you have that capability and it's within your grasp to do that, and you're also not just living up to your full potential. And I guarantee you, because here's the thing, why are prisoners buff? Why are soldiers buff? Because it's easy and it's free. Because the one thing you can do at any given time in the day is knock out 50 air squats and 50 push-ups, right? The earth is always right there, okay? And if you're a normal person, not a prisoner or a soldier, and you start doing those things, I guarantee you those positive effects are going to trickle over into the rest of your life. You're going to stop settling for things. You're going to want to start pushing things. Yeah.
And I'm going to go back to what you said about not quitting. I think my parents' generation kind of gave the millennial generation a hard time about participation trophies. Everyone gets a trophy, but that's what you're saying. That's success in life, is showing up every day and not quitting. Now you have to put something into it, and I don't think 18th place should get a trophy, but showing up every day is how you do that. And fail, you have a bad day. Okay, show up tomorrow. Show up the next day. Be consistent. nobody is perfect. Nobody works out every day. Well, most people don't. Normal people don't work out every day. There's some crazy people that, you know, they work out 3 times a day and they're probably going to get hurt. But
that's
like, there's the other end. But just show up every day and do something. Like, see yourself as a healthy person. I think that is, like, that's the key to life. I think showing up is huge.
Oh, yeah. I agree. And sometimes and you're a father. I'm not currently a father, but I hope to be in the near future. Sometimes showing up, you don't realize how powerful that is, right? Like for you and your kids, right? If you're not at the game, you're not at the game, right? And if you're there, and even if, you know, you don't know what's going on, or you don't like ballet or whatever it is, you're trying to support that kid, and presence is half the battle, right? And getting to the gym is half the battle, and getting to your desk in the morning is half the battle. But it's all perspective, right? You talked about participation trophies. Well, people also need to stop feeling sorry for themselves and understand that they are capable of more than what they know, and they need to look at challenges as opportunities instead of roadblocks.
That's huge. And I think the hard part is when you've been on the like, you're on the other side, you look back and you go, man, I did that, and life is so good. And I think it's a real struggle for people who have never experienced that. So if you're listening and you're like, man, I've never really done anything hard, start with something small. Take a 2-minute cold shower. You know, and just suck it up. Like, I promise you, like, it works. Doing something hard works. And there's companies that will take your money and put you through a GoRuck or a Tough Mudder or a Spartan race. Like, they have designed these things to make it hard. Go try some. Sign up and fail. So just show up on the first day. See what happens. I think that's really, really important.
Hey, and if you're a young man and you're listening and you don't know what to do, just quit your job and join the Army and quit complaining.
There you go.
You will figure out one of 2 things. You either hate it or you love it, and it will give you a direction to go in life. So it's go ahead.
Did you love the Army?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm still in the National Guard, but definitely very much in a much less intense, much lower intensity level than active duty, especially on a special forces team. It's a full-time job plus. So when I was a kid, and again, this has to do with mindset and some of your environment, right? Like when I was a kid, I grew up on 80s muscle movies, you know, so Stallone and Van Damme and, you know, Schwarzenegger and Predator and Commando. Those were like gospel for me. So I knew I wanted to do something like that. I just didn't know that was an actual real thing. So I knew about the military, obviously. 9/11 happened when I was in late high school, and I didn't really need permission from my family, but I wanted to go to college first because at that time only a couple of people in my family had gone to college, and my grandparents were still alive, and I thought, I'm going to go get a bachelor's degree. I know I'm supposed to do it. I'll get it done, and I'll never have to think about it ever again. And so went to school, and then I joined the Army after that. And while I was at school, I found out about the program to try out directly for Special Forces, and I was 20 at that point, and that's from 20 until I joined at 25. That's all I thought about. That's all I did. That's what I wanted to do. And when I actually finally graduated, so you're talking about a 7-year process of finding out about that program to actually graduating, 7 or 8 years, I was thrilled. I mean, in many ways, it was a high point in my life. Obviously, there's further ones now as I realize and get older. But when I got there, that was all I wanted to do. I wasn't married. I wasn't dating. I was on a team, and that was that. That was my life, and I definitely loved it. And advice to all the young people out there, especially men, if you're doing something right now and you're young and you're in your 20s and you're not sure about what to do, or if you're thinking about taking a different path because it's hard, or you're thinking about slowing down and getting married, do not stop. Do not slow down. Push it as hard as you can while you have no external responsibilities. You must do that. That's what your 20s are for.
Be selfish.
If you're out there and you're 27, you're 22, 23, you don't know what's going on, it's okay. You got like 10 years. But pick something and freaking stick with it. And that's what I did, and I loved every second of it. And doing all of that, right, you front load all of that hard work. So those moves that you made 10 years ago, you don't realize it, but they're still paying off, right? And the things I'm doing now are going to pay off 10 years from now. And that's how I look at it anyway.
Yeah, no, I think I have kind of the same track. I was dating somebody, and when I graduated, I'm like, I want to be a fireman. And and the ability, I think, to have a singular goal with zero distractions. Dating somebody, I want to be a fireman. I'm like, sorry, I got to go. I can't do both. I want to be a good boyfriend, and I can't. So I got to go. And then I think that's huge. It's huge to have that singular focus. And now I don't have that. I got focused on everything, right? Like life is different. It's good. It's different. But I got a lot going on. So that's good.
Yeah,
advice.
but if you hadn't done that, if you had not been singular with your focus and your commitment, you would not be able to do the things you're doing now for your family, right? I truly believe that, right? Yeah. Because what are we really trying to do in life? We're trying to figure out who we are and what makes us happy or what makes us tick. What's your purpose, right? And so if you don't have that nailed down, or at least like you're making progress on that by the time you get married and have kids, you're going to have a really hard time emotionally and spiritually, I think, right? Knowing what I do about myself, because I've put myself through hard things in the training environment, and also overseas, I got exposed to some other really hard things as well. It definitely turns down the volume on the rest of life to where, like, okay, flat tire, really not a big fucking deal, right? Because I've been blown up, and that was a bigger deal, right? And I've made it through that fine, like, thankfully. So we can get this flat tire done. You know, we can finish the backyard. We can deal with the traffic on 75 at 6 p.m. You know, like, it's okay. We don't really have usually crazy problems. And again, you don't get that perspective without those intensely high stress levels early in your life.
Yeah, I had someone give me some good advice. Like, as you get older, figure out who you are and be good at that. And then if you get married, figure out how to be a good husband. And you can do all the things that you can, you know, like, I feel like it's the news that you have a girlfriend, you get her pregnant, then you move in together, then you buy a house, then you get married. It seems like it's a little backwards, but if you figure out who you are and you're by yourself, then you figure out who you are as a couple, then you figure out who you are as a parent. When you stop being that parent with a little kid, you still knew who you were with your wife. Or if something were to happen and you're single again, you know who that person is. And I think some guys struggle, they skip it. And then there's always that in the back of my head, man, I missed out being a single guy who got married young or whatever. So I think that's a pretty big deal. I think going through those steps is important.
Well, and then when you're at the point where 10 years down the road, you know, and it's not bad. It's honorable to hold down a job because it's the responsible thing to do because you have a wife and kids and a mortgage, right? That is good, and you should do that, right? However, I've seen guys do it. I have not personally. I didn't have to do it because I was single and I went through my training. But you can still do hard things when you're married with kids, right? Like you said, figuring out what you're about is incredibly important, right? So if you value your relationship, you'll be honest with your partner and say, hey, this is actually very, very important to me. And if I don't do this, I think I'm going to die inside. So we need to figure out how to make this happen. And I know there's a lot of people out there who either didn't take the path they wanted or maybe didn't take it far enough and have regret. And you don't want to have regret at the end of the day, right? That makes the last half of your life very hard.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, that's pretty powerful. Switching gears a little bit. I want to talk about, so we've talked about mentally being prepared. We've talked about physically being prepared. You are a special forces medic. You've probably experienced more trauma, not probably, you have experienced more trauma than most people will ever see in their entire life. And if you could give me a little bit of insight on what is the average man or person, what could they do to be ready? Because, you might not, no one around you might ever get shot. But someone's going to cut themselves. Something's going to happen. You're going to get in a car accident. From SF medic, what should we be worrying about? What should we be thinking about? Like, how do we prepare for those emergencies? Mindset, and then maybe actually tools and techniques and some skill. Let's go down that road.
Certainly. I would say the most important thing you can understand, really without any intense medical training or experience, is hemorrhage control, right? Gotcha. So that's the number one thing that we can mitigate as people without hospitals is we can apply direct pressure and we can use tourniquets, So I would highly recommend for people that aren't involved in organizations that teach that sort of thing to do a quick Google search in your area and look for like a Stop the Bleed course or Stop the Bleeder or a first aid, first responder course, because a lot of those are very good and either free or very reasonable, and it'll give you at least some awareness of what to do, right? And then quick side note on equipment, if you're going to have anything at all and you only have $25, buy a tourniquet from Amazon, and specifically a Cat 9 tourniquet from North American Rescue. That's one that's approved. And the other is a soft, so S-O-F-T, like tango,
right,
wide tourniquet. And I believe that's from, shoot, I can't remember who makes that one right now.
I'll look it up and link it on the show notes.
Yeah. So those two on Amazon, they're like 25 or 26 bucks. Those are the specific ones, and there's cheap Chinese copies on there that are much cheaper. Don't be fooled; they will break in your hands. Don't do that.
I will add something to that. I teach first aid and CPR, and I bought like 10 of the cheap ones, and I just put them on PVC pipe, and they're junk. I mean, it's great for training, and that's what I use them for. But in my first aid kit, that's not what I have. Like that is, if you're going to cheap out on something, buy a cheap bag and put it in. But it's not
right. Exactly.
That's not it.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't save that $12. Your life is not worth it. So thing number one is for medical preparation. Statistically, I know you and I have talked about this before, but especially overseas in combat trauma situations, so mass shootings or stabbings, shootings, hemorrhage control is the number one killer. Right. So be prepared to handle that. Number two is, a lot of people overlook this, especially if you're a family man, is preparedness, right? So be ready to deal with no light, no water, no food for, I'd say, at least 24 hours, preferably something more like 72. So especially if you've got a family, have a few headlamps, have a couple 5-gallon water jugs, or have a way to work your well or pump water without power, and then have some shelf-stable food as well. And a lot of people get kind of uneasy when you talk about preparedness, but really America, as a massive country with our seemingly unlimited resources, we're only 5, 6, 7 days away from civil war and collapse at any time. If the power got shut off and the grocery stores ran out of food and the supply chains weren't working properly, or export import was cut off, you're not going to have that much food on the shelf, right? So just food for thought. And again, this is obviously influenced from my time overseas and seeing people in really dire straits, right? But you need to be able to stop some bleeding. You need to be able to procure water and food for your family, and you need to be able to have some sort of light source and source of warmth. So some blankets, a tent, whatever, right? That's, I think, critically important.
I'll add something to it that I've seen multiple times, and it goes to preparedness. Is I went on a car accident. It was cold and like the 30 degrees. So for Michigan, not like freezing cold, but cold. I think there's a little bit of snow on the ground. Car accident. There's a guy with his daughter who's like, I don't know, 3. He was taking her to daycare. He gets out. He's wearing flip-flops. Yeah. I'm like, dude, like now you're outside. You're in flip-flops. You got a T-shirt on, and you're. What is your little girl gonna like? How are you? If you had to run away, how are you gonna do that? If you had to do something, and I wear flip-flops to the beach because I'm going to take them off, But like, if I'm going to the mall with my kids, I wear shoes that I usually that I lace up. Like I think those are little things, and it's easy to go, "Oh, you're being paranoid." Well, I can't. I have to, like it's a little thing. It's a little like wear shoes that tie.
Paranoia is a good label. Yeah, people will say that you're just paranoid. I mean, not really. Like, do you know where food comes from? Do you know how to make fresh water? Like, do you know how bad you'll be if you drink dirty water? Like, people just don't understand, because luckily our standard of living is so high in America. You don't really have to deal with that, right? I will say this too. So a couple of things I wanted to hit on for sure was like, number one, fitness. I think we hit that enough, right? If you look in the mirror and you don't like what you see, you're probably not fit enough. And I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm not the mean guy. I'm just saying it's fixable. Okay. Unless you have type 1 diabetes or some sort of glandular disorder where, you can't control your body, it's doable. Get 10,000 steps a day, put the fork down. Number two, what I was going to call it was protection, but you kind of covered it with hemorrhage control or first aid, right? Is you have a way to protect your family and yourself, right? So a basic understanding of firearms to defend your house, right? And a reasonable firearm, a shotgun or a pistol.
Right.
Understand how to use that and train your family members on it, right? And then a sub point from that is have a plan to where everyone has a headlamp, a weather appropriate outfit, right? And some food and water. Because very seldom will I go outside in just shorts and sliders or something, you know? I usually always have a knife on me and a flashlight and my wallet and my phone fully charged. Like, my wife makes fun of me for it, but I am always ready to, in the Army, you call it getting blown out. So like when you're in a patrol base or you're in a, it usually happens only in training. I've never been, I'm trying to think. I've never had to blow out of an actual base, but it has happened. But basically what it means is you grab your shit that's right next to you and you go, right? And that's how you should look at it. Or actually, well, people will refer to it as a bug out bag. So if you're listening and you don't know what to do, just Google, how do I put together a bug out bag? And that will put you down a path of preparedness and relatively affordable ways to make yourself feel better. Yeah. So I mean, protect yourself.
Yeah. COVID happened, right? We couldn't buy toilet paper. You know,
right. Exactly.
That was a very small thing, but it is reality. And I think, you know, going back to being, just having a mindset, like for instance, if you go hunting and you're carrying a tool, and this is when I teach first aid, if you're carrying a tool that does something like puts holes in things or cuts things, you should have a way to stop the hole or plug the hole or stop the bleeding.
Right.
Like when I go, I've had people, what do you carry in your first aid kit? I'm like, oh, when I'm hunting, I just carry a tourniquet. I don't carry any, all the other stuff I can figure out. If I need a Tylenol because I've got a headache, it's back at the camp. But what could kill me in the next 10 minutes is a giant hole in my leg, and what could stop it is a tourniquet. So I think thinking about what is coming, and it really isn't hard. Like you can Google, YouTube, how to put in a tourniquet, watch a couple of them. The one that makes sense is probably it. The one taught by the Special Force medic, listen to that guy. He's done it before.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Joe Schmo might not actually know, but, you know, there's some quality guys out there.
Hey, just take all the slack out and tighten it as much as you can. Don't be looking for a distal pulse or bright red bleeding, because it's probably going to be a bloody mess. And if you couldn't find the pedal pulse to begin with, which most people can't, you're definitely not going to be able to find it without with a tourniquet on. But yeah, I have you know, definitely a specific background that makes me think about these things a little more, because I have lived in like those types of field conditions overseas, right? Like I have lived off MREs and just had a headlamp and a gun next to me. So obviously I'm partial to that mindset. However, I think, you know, I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest to a family man that he should have a CPL, right? Doesn't have to carry every day if he doesn't want to, but I think it's a reasonable consideration to make. I think that family man, if he has 2 kids, should be able to carry both of those kids up the stairs, right? Without freaking huffing and puffing or dropping one of them, you know? And I think he should be able to, you know, take care of things around the house. So that's another kind of implied task there, is like understand some basic maintenance stuff, right? Essentially what I'm getting at is, you know, and what I think what we've been kind of dancing around is like becoming independent, right? Becoming self-sufficient in a way. Obviously, I'm not a subsistence farmer. I don't have a fruit garden or vegetable garden in my house. Like, I still have to go kill meat to eat. But at least I have a rifle, and I understand how to do that. And I know how to kill deer, right, and clean a deer. So I guarantee you there's people listening who are just like, man, I don't know even how to get started on that. Well, don't zoom out so much. Zoom in. Find your biggest weakness, right? Tomorrow you don't have to get a gym membership and get a CPL and build a bug out bag and get a 40-gallon water jug for your garage. But just look in the mirror or just think about your life. Chances are most people are acutely aware of the thing that's bothering them the most, right? So even outside of, you know, shooting and fighting and self-defense, is what's bothering you the most right now? Is it your fitness? Is it your family? Is it your job? And go to work on that first. Do one thing at a time. You know, that's going back to Army stuff. That's one thing at a time. Break it down.
No, I think that's a great place to wrap it up, man. I think that kind of puts a bow on it. Be mentally prepared. Know your purpose, right? You signed up to be a husband. You were made to be a dad, right? That is something that if you have a kid, it's yours. You're supposed to be a dad. You decided to be a husband. You decided to be a leader. Take action on it every day. And it doesn't have to be huge, right? Something, you can change something tonight. You could change something this morning. You could change. You can become better, and go out and get stressed. Right? Stress is okay. Right? Go push yourself. Go. Put on a backpack. Put some weight in, and see how far you can walk.
Right. Start easy. Do a walk around the block, do 50 push-ups, do what you can do. And if you've done something hard, don't rest on your laurels and keep pushing, because Janet Jackson said it best, right? Was it Janet Jackson? What have you done for me lately?
Yeah, I think that's
her old hit.
Yeah. If not, we'll say it is.
I'm not kidding you. I think about that song all the time.
That was your mantra in the morning? You got Janet Jackson in your head?
It was. During selection, my mantra, my song was The Man in the Mirror from Michael Jackson. I shit you not.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I was literally rucking and doing land navigation, and it was also the tempo where I was walking.
Gotcha, that helps.
Don't rest on your laurels. Get out there.
I think having something in your head that you say, so my daughter has some problems with anxiety. She plays volleyball, and I'm watching her, and just before she hits, she mouths something. And she every time she does it, and we call her name's Matilda, we call her Tinky. I'm like, Tinky, are you saying something before you hit the ball? She goes, yeah. I'm like, what is it? She goes, it's a secret. And I'm like, that is so cool. Like, nice. She has something, because she gets anxious, I'm like, what is she? Like, it's a secret, and that's hers. And I think, she's putting something inside her that is powerful. And I think what you've shared with us is really powerful. Anything outside that I didn't ask that I have an opportunity to say that I didn't ask?
No, I think I've kind of hammered it. I just want to say thanks for having me on, and thanks for what you do as well, because maybe I did some stuff overseas, but that's really far away, and what you're doing every day really makes a difference. Cool. And it's definitely inspiring to me, and certainly to the people in the community for sure. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. And guys, if you liked what you heard today, I ask you to put it into action. And if you thought it was good, leave me a rating and review. Again, this is the Earn Your Title podcast. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.